going on. But we're going to be taking a look at the idea of discernment. Do you all know, what does discernment mean? Something God gives you to understand a situation. What else could it mean? Thank you. Distinguish between right and wrong. What else might discernment be? Figure things out. Thank you. These are really great ideas, and I'm going to show you some pictures that I hope will help us understand the true nature of discernment. And this is my first, is the favorite, is it means to separate. Now, if you've anybody here ever baked a cake or something where you got to put only the whites in or only the yolks in, right? How do you do that?
It's difficult.
Very carefully. It's difficult.
We can't get any, meringue, you can't get a bit of yolk in, otherwise it won't fluff up.
Very good. If you put even one little teensy drop of the yolk in the whites for meringue, in the words of the great chef, forget about it. Yeah. You know, it just won't work. And you sit there with the eggshells, right? You do that. You know, you can buy a tool in the store. You just crack the egg in and it does it. But you also just use your hand. Just crack it and, through your fingers. But it means to divide or to separate. Another way is to think of it as judging. Just like in Maryland, we have a state fair. I'm sure we have a state fair somewhere here in Florida, and they have county fairs where people bring the animals in. And why do they bring the animals in? To judge them, to see which one is the better one. We went to the Florida State Fair once, and they were having, one of the pavilions is for canines, for dogs. And so we walked in to see it, and, the people are, you ever see that on television, how they prance around? They hold it out like that. I'm like, really? But anyway, they were judging, and then they, see the dog, and they're looking at it. They're judging to see whether it's well developed. Another way to think about it is to discern is to sift, to separate the wheat from the chaff. Have you ever had a recipe or made something with beans? You ever take dry beans and soak them? Before you do that, what are you supposed to do?
Rinse them.
You're supposed to rinse them. And even then, you're supposed to go through them, because sometimes there's a little stone. And guess what happens when a little stone meets your teeth while you're biting? Now, I don't get this. I grew up eating and chewing unpopped popcorn kernels. I don't know why people think this is wrong. I know it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I now have 4 crowns in the back of my teeth. That's unrelated, I'm sure. And the fact that I used to also take not crushed ice, but cubes of ice and put it on. So that's not connected. But it means to sift, to separate. And finally, it's to analyze. It's to look closely at something, to look at it, to figure out, is it really what it says it is? I mean, if many people here, I'm going to go make a wild guess. Most of you have a cell phone, right?
Right.
And somewhere along the line, you have a computer, and somewhere along the line, you got a message that said you're installing it, and you have to give your approval. You have to click this box that says, yes, the user agreement, right? Have you ever read those stinking things? No. Why not? Because they go on forever. I once printed out, because it's me, I downloaded an app for one of the major, if I were to say the name of this major, well-known international car rental company, you immediately would know it, okay? And I decided I was going to download and read the agreement, okay? It isn't that I had nothing better to do, but I just thought, I'm going to find out what this sucker says. 60 pages later, and I read that thing. Do you know what rights I gave up? Everything. They had everything except my firstborn child. It said that they had the right to monitor the car I was driving and to see whether I was making sharp turns or not, accelerating hard, stopping hard, that they had the right to look at all of my social media accounts. They could then reach out to my social media connections. You know, you just give it away. And it made me think about our spiritual walk. Do we just click the button on things we hear? We hear so much. We see things on the television, on our computers, on our phones. We hear it from our neighbors and we just click the button. Or do we really discern it? Do we think about it? I just bet you that most of us here, when you go out to a restaurant, you're wondering, you say, you know, I had a really bad meal here before, and so I'm going to come back and just jam it in my face. Wouldn't you be questioning? Would you like sniff it? Would you even go back? And yet we go back and back because we don't discern on ideas. You know, Paul says, I pray that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and the depths of insight so that you may be able to do what? Discern. Not just discern, but discern what is best. And he wants us to be pure and blameless. Discernment is an active thing. Discernment is not, oh, well. Discernment says, I'm going to take a look. Discernment says, I'm going to weigh it before I figure it out. Let me tell you, every time we've sold a house, have you ever sold a house? Yeah. And you get, what, 3 sheets of paper, right? No. How much paper do you get? 300. Yeah, you get bunches of it. And yet, yeah, I'll sign it. Doesn't matter what's in there. But you know what? Maybe it does. But what you're doing is trusting someone, right? You're trusting who? Your real estate agent, someone who represents you, who is protecting your interest, to say, it's okay. When I sold my dad's house, I was remote. The house was in Baltimore. That's where the realtor was. That's where the house was. And I talked to Debbie. And I said, Debbie, I have to be able to trust you. So I checked out your references. And I know you're an honest person. And I've got to trust you because you're there and I'm here. And we got work to do on the house, so I don't know who to connect with to get the painters and the carpenters and, you know, get the house fixed up a little. I've got to depend on you to make those decisions, to recommend the right people. When you and I live life, we can't be experts on everything, so we have to depend on people, some experts. And so, spiritually speaking, we all need those kinds of people that we can trust. Because God says we need to be on our guard. Can I tell you a secret? I wish I could pause the internet so it would just be us, because this is secret. This is really big secret. There are people out there who are out to get us. Okay? That's a secret. Shh. They're out to get us. That's why we need discernment. That's why we're told in Ephesians to be what? No, we are not told to be careful. What kind of careful? Very careful. What's the difference between careful and very careful? Very much. Yeah, I love you. Right, exactly. It's like you got to put the very pedal to the metal. You got to be discerning, to be mentally, to observe, to consider, to look at. You don't just be careful. Careful's a good thing. But to be very careful. Because not everybody out there is on your team. Not everybody out there is there for you, for your benefit, for you to have a life that's flourishing. I really like that word, flourishing. You know what it means? To be a bloom, a beautiful flower that produces fruit. And everybody looks at it, and the tree is healthy and can fight those darn little bugs that are out there to come at you, right? To be very careful. Some of you might be old enough to remember a show called Hill Street Blues. And in that show, Sergeant Phil Estahouse at the beginning said, let's be careful out there.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there. 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 Hey, let's be careful out there. 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 And hey, let's be careful out there. And let's be careful out there. Let's be careful out there. Let's be careful out there. And hey, what do you say? Let's be careful out there. Let's be very careful out there. Let's be extra careful out there. Let's be real careful out there. Now let's be damn careful out there. Let's be careful out there. And let's be careful out there. Let's be careful out there. Let's be careful out there. And for God's sake, be careful out there.
For God's sake, be careful out there. Because just like those police officers are out there, where were they? They're on the street. Not everybody is out there obeying the laws. Not everybody out there is on their team. There are people, there are organizations that are out there to get you. And not to build you up, but to tear you down. So we need to be careful out there. We need to watch out. Jesus says we are to be watching out for who? False prophets. And what do? They come. How do they come? They're wolves in sheep's clothing. They're sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're what kind of wolves? They're not just wolves, right? They're not just lapdogs. No. What kind of wolves are they? Ferocious. We need to be watching out. Right now, right here, the watching out starts. Because your phones are getting filled up with stuff from people you can't control. Any wingnut with a phone anywhere in the world can send you a message. It used to be, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there were these people called editors. And before anything got printed on a piece of paper, there was an editor. And what did the editor do?
Edit out.
Edit out. And what did that editing include?
Falsehood.
False. Is it what they're saying true? Can they back it up? Is it right? Even though I may not agree with it, is it said well? Is he being honest? When the internet first came out, I read an article about it, and it still holds true. What we need are people or software or something that says this is right and this is wrong and keep the wrong stuff out. But guess what? They're very smart in getting around the rules. They're really smart getting around.
Double talking. Have you ever noticed a real long-winded article? You don't know dippo as to what they're even talking about till you get about halfway, and you don't get the gist of it till the last few sentences.
That's true. That's true. They do.
Time.
Well, that's the style. I mean, you find that in articles from all sorts, all places.
I read halfway down starting.
Well, I understand, and that's a good thing for you to do. But you really need to consider before you put, before I put anything on the screen as an example, okay, I double check it. Because before God, I'm on the hook for it, okay? So that's part of what I need to do as to honor God, but also to protect you. I will not use images, pictures, videos from certain websites, from certain organizations. I just won't. Now, the picture is fine, the quote is fine, the video is, but I won't use it because it's from an organization or a church that is against the things of Jesus Christ. I just won't use it. And it's my honor, because I won't use a video clip that says, okay, here's the clip, like in some of the things, like the new thing that's going out that has, you click on it, it takes you somewhere. If the clip is this big, but if you keep listening and watching, and then it says something wrong, I won't use that clip. Because God has said, I'm responsible. And I'm not saying that to build me up or anything, but you have to be that same way about what we're putting in our eye gate, what we're putting in our ear gate. We need this discernment and these ferocious wolves. We think of ferocious wolves like this, right? We think of them as what? Attacking. And who do they attack? The weak, the young, the lame, the one that's trailing behind. And then what do they do to it? They isolate it. They get it away from the protection of the group. And then they bring it down. And it's literally a bloody mess. But I want to give you a different picture of these ferocious wolves. Because, yes, the ferocious wolves can tear down, but there's another picture. And the picture is that it grabs. And think about what happens in a robbery. What does a robber do? Grabs it, right? Pulls it to themselves. There are these things called smash and grabs. Have you seen them on the internet? Where these, I can't call them gangs, because a gang is what? Sort of an I'm sorry? A bunch of people that are sort of organized. They got the same name. They got the, initiation rights. These are virtual gangs. These are some, I'm sorry?
They're professional at what they do.
They are professional. And what they do is they just send out a message to some friends. And and it says, at 6:45, we're going to attack this store. And they show up at 6:45 with bats and other things. They go in, they smash, they grab, and they split. That's a smash and grab. That's the same thing. that these wolves are there to smash and grab or to blackmail. Think about what's a blackmail. To steal your integrity, to grab and steal your reputation. That's another way to think about this, that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. But God says we need to be on the lookout for these people. Don't assume that email or that text or that call is there to be helpful. I wish I didn't have to say that. I really do. But we need to be discerning. And Jesus says, by their fruits you will recognize them. The fruits of these wolves, right? Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Every good tree bears what?
Good fruit.
Good fruit. And what does the bad tree bear?
Bad fruit.
Okay. What's the difference between the trees?
Nothing.
They all look the same. They look the same. They both have fruit, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this idea of the fruit is it looks the same, but it's bad fruit. It looks the same. My mother, bless her soul, never walked into a grocery store. Never went into a produce store or one of these fruit stands by the side of the road. And she never said, I'll take a basket. Or no. She went through every one of them. We sat there and a dozen of corn, and we shucked that bad boy, right? You know what shucking corn means, right? You grab it, you pull it down, you look for worms, right? Make sure it's fresh, and most importantly, that the kernels were big. Because if they were small, we weren't getting our money's worth. And so, we did it with the watermelon. You didn't pick out a watermelon. What do you do to tell if a watermelon? You knock on it. A cantaloupe. You press on where it, is it soft, or tomatoes. No blight, no blight, no cuts, no bruises. Strawberries. You go to the store, there are all these apples. You don't just grab them. You got to do what with them? Look them over with a microscope, right? You feel them, you smell them. Nothing came into our house that hadn't been picked over. Mary Ann went with my mother to an Italian deli. And my mother is known by a first name basis, was known in every Italian deli in Baltimore because she had a reputation. You were going to get the good stuff. When she went and bought cheese, grated cheese, do you think my mother said, I'll take some of that cheese that's already grated? Do you think she said that? No. What did she do? She said, cut me off a block of that cheese. Cut the block off and then had it grated because she knew then what was in that container. Mary Ann said, I'd like some Italian sausage because we were going to make sauce. And the guy said, what kind, hot or sweet? And she said, sweet. Oh, and how much does it cost? My mother said, oh, forgive her. Forgive her. And she turned to Mary and said, we don't ask that. Because she knew she was getting the best price because of who she was. She knew she was going to get the best price. She didn't have to ask. But bad fruit looks just like good fruit. Think about, a grove. It's what? One tree after another after another. What's the assumption?
All the same.
They're all the same. But Jesus says some of the fruit is good and some of the fruit is bad. And the word bad fruit is actually poison. It isn't that it's all shriveled up. It's that it looks the same on the outside, but on the inside, it's bad. What did you say? Give that woman a cheroot. Because that's the next slide. Give her a kiss. Give her a kiss. You reward her. It's like mushrooms. I don't know enough. Does anybody here know enough to know what mushrooms are right or wrong? You do. Used to pick them? You're a braver man than I, Gunga, did. You only knew 5? Yeah, but there's many of them. And some of them will kill you. Our dog doesn't care. Our dog sees a mushroom and says, lunch, and grabs it and eats it. I don't understand our dog. But it's this way. Think about the trees. Jesus is saying discernment is more than just looking on the outside. Because the trees all look the same. They all look, they have leaves, they got branches, they got fruit. But it's what's inside that matters. Yes?
I have a prime example of that would be the Garden of Eden.
Give that man a cheroot. Isn't he good? Because you see, you know this stuff. Why am I here? What did the woman say? How did the fruit look? Good. It was good for fruit and pleasing to the eye and desirable. You look at it and you say, lunch, right? This is good. How could we not want this? And it didn't matter what God had said, did it? That was gone. The food was good, something more than just physical need. It was going to help me be wiser. And she grabbed it and she gave it to her husband, who was an idiot, just like the rest of us men. He took it. It isn't always what's on the outside. Jesus says the fruit, the poison is on the inside. And he then goes and talks about different kinds of people. Now, Jesus is not talking about good people and bad people, okay? It's pretty easy to tell whether good people or bad people. I mean, somebody goes and kills their neighbor. It doesn't take a lot of discernment to figure out if they're a good or bad person, right? It's like the other week, some of us were driving here and people passed us on the double line, right? Doesn't take a lot of discernment to figure that one out, does it? No. But what does take discernment is not good people, bad people, but religious people and believers. Because what do they both do? Remember, Jesus said, don't be like them when they pray. The religious people pray. Or when you give, don't give like this. They give. It's not about good and bad. It's about religious people versus followers of Jesus. They both take communion. They both sit in there. They both stand. They both sing. But it's not on what's on the outside, is it? It's the inside, because they're giving. Why? Remember the word I used before about the ravenous wolves? Blackmail? They're trying to blackmail God. And I've done it. And I bet there's at least one other person in here who's tried to blackmail God. Have you ever gone to God and say, oh God, okay, I got your attention now. I'm going to do this, okay? And because I'm going to do this, you are going to do that, right? We got it clear, God? That's blackmailing God. Because who's in control?
He is.
Not in this negotiation, he's not. He is in control, but I'm saying I'm in control. I'm going to tell you what to do. And there will be many people who will say to God in that day, what are they going to say? Lord, Lord. They don't just say Lord, they say Lord, Lord. Why do you think they would repeat themselves?
They think that they're really worthy of him.
They're being adamant.
They're worthy of him. They're being adamant. It's also an emotional thing. When David's son, Solomon, rebelled against him, what did David say? No, his son Absalom. It was his son Absalom. What did he say? Absalom, Absalom, my son, my son. He repeated it. When Martha is running around like a nut job, trying to do everything, not anybody like who's up in front, in control, what does Jesus say to her? Martha, Martha. He repeats, when you repeat the name, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? You repeat to show this is real. You got this deep, intimate connection. And they're saying, Lord, Lord. Aren't we going to get in? Didn't we do all this stuff in your name? Lord, Lord is the word for, in the Old Testament, the name of God. I am who I am, he says. He says, it's only the one who does the will of my Father. It's not on the outside. Because when they say, Lord, Lord, they say, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we teach Sunday school? Didn't we teach Bible class in your name? Didn't we drive out demons? Didn't we perform miracles? You know, they had all the outside stuff going on, but what was going on inside? Nothing. Think about this. Jesus sends 70 disciples out, 2 by 2. Remember this? To drive out demons. Remember that? Who was part of that 70? Judas. He taught. He drove out demons. If you read 1st and 2nd Corinthians, they were miracles all over the place, but they didn't know the Lord personally. They had all the outside things going on. And what does God say? What does God say to them?
I never knew you.
I never knew you. Wow. Have you ever run into anybody who says Jesus is not God? Have you heard? I talk to these people all the time. I say, would you read this passage here from Matthew? Who is the judge? Jesus. Who's the judge? God. He's God. He's being called Lord. He's being called Yahweh. Or Jehovah, if you're of that ilk. He's God. Wake up and smell what you're shoveling. I never knew you. You know, we like to think about God's wrath. You ever think about God's wrath? I do. Every once in a while, I just get on the wrath kick. And what is God? How do you perceive God's wrath? What is it that you see?
Honesty. Totally honest.
Honesty. What? Punishment. Fire. Brimstone, right? The whole thing, right? How does Jesus give punishment? Separation. I never knew you. Fire is bad. Have you ever burned your hand or part of your body? It's awful. Jesus says the ultimate the ultimate punishment is separation from him. Sometimes it's easy to figure out, isn't it, when God's in it or not? Sometimes it's real, it's easy. You know it. But sometimes it's hard because, sometimes there are fakes. And some of the fakes are hard to know. They use all the same lingo. They speak Christianese. They say the right words. And they avoid certain words. They dress a certain way. And you think, why not? Well, you got to discern what they're saying. And you have to discern what they're not saying. So how do we apply this? How does Jesus say to apply this? He says, everyone who hears my words and puts them into practice is like a what? A wise guy, a wise man. And what does he do? He builds his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, and it didn't fall. And he didn't lose his air conditioning. His foundation was on the rock. He hears, but he just doesn't hear, does he? He puts it into practice. He builds his house. His house. And who lives in his house?
We do, hopefully.
Okay, but in this story, he's building his own house for him and his family. The family, the whole house is on the foundation where the weight, and the rock is where the weight goes. So that when the storm comes, it's sitting on something. But everyone who hears these words of mine, Jesus says, and does not put them into practice, what's it like?
Foolish man.
He's a fool. I didn't call anybody a fool. Jesus did. Okay? And he built his house. And what happened? The winds come and beat against the house. And what happens?
Great crash.
There's a crash. Not just a crash, a great crash. Now, what's different about the houses? Do the houses on the outside look any different?
No.
No. It's where they're built. It's what they're built on. It's what's underneath. You ever go to a house and say, my, that's a nice house, but I'd like to see your foundation? No, you don't. Here in Florida, I find this stuff interesting. Maybe you're going to go out and say, what was he talking about? But here we are. This is the East Coast. And the building codes are not all the same. Okay, did you know that? Here in Florida, when you put in a house, the footers, what goes around the foundation, 12 inches. That's a diagram, it explains it. 12 inches. That's like 2 shovelfuls, right? Before we came on our merry way around the country, we lived in Connecticut. And we had a deck put in. And it's like they're drilling for oil. They had to put it down 48 inches. Now, why in Connecticut is the depth of the foundation different than here in Florida? Frost line. Explain what that means for those who have only lived in Florida.
Well, when you have like frost that goes down when it comes out in the spring,
Uh-huh.
it comes up, it destroys, it moves everything. You have to get down below it.
It expands, it moves. And you've got to get below the frost line where the ground freezes. Because if you don't, honey, you are in deep cock-a-doo-doo. When they put on this deck, they just kept digging and digging and digging and digging. 60 inches was the minimum. Or 48, excuse me. 48. You see, where you live, who you're around, what influences you're next to or come into your life, make a difference on the depth of your foundation. My dear wife, Mary Ann, she grew up in Ozzie and Harriet land. She really did. The idea that somebody would want to hurt her is so foreign to her. I look at somebody and say, what are they up to? She's very discerning. She really is. But she grew up in a spiritual Florida where the depth doesn't have to be that deep. I grew up in a spiritually cold place. And my foundation's got to be a lot deeper. Not better, different. Because of where I came from, because of my background. You got to dig deep, people. You got to dig deep. You got to go deep. Because at that day, these people are saying, Lord, Lord, look at all the good stuff we did, right? Hey, we're good. We got it together. We gave. Yeah, made us look good when we gave to the poor. Or we prayed, and people came up afterwards and said, oh, that was such a beautiful prayer. We got that. Jesus says, I never knew you. Go away from me. What does he call them? Evildoers. Now, did they do evil? No. Not on the outside, but on the inside. It was all about them. Jesus claims to be the judge of all time and eternity. He doesn't call down fire. He says, you're going to be away from me forever. And where God's not, that's a bad place to be. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the people were amazed. Why were they amazed? Because he taught like someone with authority. What's someone with authority? What are they like? They know what they're talking about.
You could ask questions and get proper answers.
Ask questions, get answers. You'll notice Jesus rarely, if ever, quotes anyone but the Bible itself. He quotes God, he quotes the Old Testament. That's his source. Those guys, well, let me tell you about this writer. Let me tell you about this rabbi. Let me tell you about this guy. Let me quote this poem. Jesus stayed on point. They were amazed. And that's the standard. That's the standard that everyone who gets up in front of a group of people, that's the target, is to be amazing. And God's the one who makes them amazing. This is the standard. They are amazed, but they didn't just say, wow, that was great. Okay, well, where are we going to lunch? It wasn't that kind of amazing. This was a wow kind of amazing. And then they stayed around and say, wasn't that amazing? Wasn't that amazing? Did you hear that? I've never heard anybody like this. And they talked and talked. And then they left. And as they went out, they said, hey, let me tell you about this guy I just heard. This Jesus is amazing. He just blew the roof off the place. It was like he got hit with lightning. Excuse me. There was a golfer. His name was Lee Trevino. What a great guy. Came out of nothing, okay? He was dirt poor. And I say that with respect, okay? He had nothing, but he taught himself how to play golf. And he was a caddy. He worked at it. He worked hard at it. He started to win. He made money. In his short career, he won more tournaments than anybody else because he was just winning and winning. He was called the Happy Mexican. I don't know why they called him that, but that's what they did. That was back in the day. You know, we don't say that. But anyway, he was a great guy. I've met the guy. He's very personable. But then one day he was on the golf course and he got struck by lightning. He got struck by lightning. And that changed the course of his life. He could still hit the ball, but he said, I just can't putt. My hands, I just can't make them do what I want to do. He got struck by lightning, and it changed the course of his life. When Jesus speaks, he's amazing. Our compressor got hit by lightning, and it will never be the same. Lee Trevino got struck by lightning. He was never the same. Maybe it's time we let Jesus strike us and change us so that we're amazed, so that we'll never be the same. They were out of their minds. They were dumbfounded. They were astonished. They left that place, and it changed their lives. Are we going to let Jesus do that? Are we going to let Jesus astound us? Part of astounding is Jesus, but part of the astounding is also that they received it. I bet there weren't too many people texting on their phones when Jesus was speaking. They weren't saying, hold on a minute, Jesus, I got this call. Right? No. They were listening. They were paying attention. Yes, it was part of the way he gave it, but it was the Holy Spirit touching those people, and they received it. And they weren't ever the same. So, for myself, I want to be amazed. There's an old hymn, I stand amazed at Jesus. I stand amazed at the cross where he would die. And if that doesn't amaze us, then we really don't understand. And we might have all the religion, we might be in all the right places, saying the right words, but in Jesus' own words, our hearts are empty tombs full of dead men's bones. Let's be amazed at Jesus. Would you pray with me? Our Father and our God, I thank you that you are amazing, and that Jesus, when he spoke, was amazing. Oh God, make our hearts open. Forgive us for our hard-heartedness. Let us open up to you to be amazed, to watch you work and do amazing things. We will thank you and go out and say, hey, let me tell you about this amazing Jesus to our friends and families and even complete strangers. In Jesus' name, amen. Speaking about amazing, one last thing. I am just overwhelmed with thankfulness. Over 60 people have signed up for this thing. I talked with George about this, and we said, yeah, maybe 10, who knows. But over 60 people have signed up. That is amazing, okay? That's a God thing, and I want to give him thanks and praise. And some of you have signed up. I'm very thankful. I'm honored that you would do that, and even more honored that you haven't unsubscribed after reading a couple of them. So thank you all very much. You guys have a great week. God bless you. You're loved. Bye-bye. Thank you.